Ethnohistory is the study of cultures and their historical traditions, usually referring to small groups with no written histories. Anthropologists study the myths, folklore, art, and in the case of First Nations people, polls to learn about the culture of the people. Haida the traditional lands of the Haida Nation, is a small group of islands off the northwest coast of British Columbia. They are magical islands shrouded in the beauty of the rainforest, beaches, and Haida art. The large Haida pools stand out as one of the most recognizable forms of Haida art. There are different types of poles, and each serve different purposes. Frontal poles are attached to the front of the house and depict the crests of the family living within the house. It is believed that in the past, at the pole raising ceremony, copper and other valuables were thrown into the hole to bring wealth and prosperity to the family. A house portal pole is like a frontal pole, but the entrance to the house was through a small oval-shaped cutout inside the pole itself. It is said that this has served as a defensive protection for the house, as the invaders would have to duck down and enter crouched, one at a time, making the doorway easy to defend from the inside. The next poles are for remembering deceased members of the community: the memorial pole and the mortuary poles. The Haida House complex, located at the Museum of Anthropology at UBC, has excellent examples of memorial and mortuary poles. Here is a memorial pole carved by Bill Reed. These usually have a single crest at the bottom with potlatch rings or plain to an eagle or raven topper. These poles were and still are used to honor relatives whose remains are elsewhere, from drowning or in modern cases buried in a graveyard. Mortuary poles were used to house the remains of people of high rank. There are two kinds. A single mortuary pole had a hollowed out cavity at the top. A year after death, the remains of the deceased were placed into a plain box and inserted into the cavity at the top of the pole. A frontal board, carved to look like the front of a chest, covered the opening to the cavity. The second type is a double mortuary pole, used for more than one person. The coffin box is supported by two poles instead of one. As with the single pole, a year after death, the remains of the deceased were placed into the coffin box. The crests on mortuary poles seem to be restricted to supernatural beings tasked with bearing the deceased to the underworld. These included killer whales, sculpins, sea grizzlies, and wascos. Selection of which supernatural beings were used depended on the family's crests. The most common poles seen carved today are the monumental poles carved for people, chiefs, and major events. These are large, freestanding poles. Modern times have also led to the creation of the commission pole for non-Haida people, governments, or businesses. But what do the images on the poles mean? I took a guided tour of the Haida poles at the Haida Heritage Center in Skidegate to find out. Dujan, our pole tour guide, said that the frontal poles carved for the Haida Heritage Center were created to represent each of the main southern villages before everyone consolidated into Skidegate. They show the family crests of the main chief from each village at the time. The use of certain crests and the combination of those crests depicts the lineage of the families. The Haida people are split into two major moieties: the eagle and the raven. Eagles use the beaver and the sculpin crests, whereas the raven clans use the killer whale, grizzly bear, rainbow, and snag. It is a combination of these crests that show the chief's status and his lineage. The pole for Scudway is a remake of an old pole found laying down at the old village site. Tim Boyko recreated what he believed the original pole looked like, but the reasons for the images are unknown. Starting at the bottom of the pole, there is a grizzly bear with a man transforming out of his mouth. Next is a beaver with his favorite stick in his mouth. It is said that if a beaver is depicted without his favorite stick, Beaver will get mad and come and chew the pole down. Above the beaver is a man wearing a cormorant skin, giving him the power to fly. Then another man, representing the preceding chief. was topped with an eagle and potlatch rings of the current chief. There are numerous small figures in the ears and hidden throughout the pole. Unfortunately, only the original artist knows why. The monumental poles carry more stories and refer to myths and legends. There are many transformation themes in Haida myths, and animals shown with human features refer to these transformation myths. A reoccurring myth is the story of the bear mother. It goes as follows. One day, a high-ranking woman was picking berries and slipped in bear poo, spilling her berries. She screamed insults to the bear people because of this. A bear feeding nearby heard her, kidnapped her, and brought her back to his village and married her. After a time, she came to love the bear people and bore her husband 2 cubs. Her brothers were eventually able to find and rescue her, bringing her and her 2 cubs back to the village, where she was able to spread her love and knowledge of the bear people to the people of her village. Her sons took the bear as their crest. That is why now, when a bear is killed for its meat and or its hide, special mourning song is sung. Inside the Heritage Center is a model depicting Skidegate village at the turn of the century. It was recreated using old photos and sketches. It shows the different types of poles and how they were arranged in front of the houses. Notice the different colored flags hanging from certain poles. This showed which nations were welcome to trade at those houses. When a pole is raised, the master carver tells the stories within the pole and how they are related. The people are then responsible for retelling the story within the pole after the carver has left. Unfortunately, many of these stories in the old poles have been lost over time for numerous reasons. It is now up to the younger generations to study the old poles and try to relearn what has been lost. Reg Davidson apprenticed to his older brother Robert when he was 16 years old and helped him carve the first pole to be raised in Masset in 100 years. On January 26, 2016, the Vancouver International Airport unveiled Reg's art display consisting of 3 poles and a box, representing water in the Sea to Sky project. I was able to catch up with him and ask about the characters in these poles.
This project, it was to represent water. So what I did was I went to look at legends, and there's one where he's told a beaver lake. So on the bottom, there's a raven in human form. There's a man sitting there.
Okay.
So he's in human form, right? And then there's a beaver, and then there's a butterfly on it. And butterfly is only companion to raven.
Oh, okay.
But the way there's a crescent moon around them, and then there's a raven it's got a lake curled up, and there's fish inside it. I carved salmon in it, so that's raven stealing the beaver lake. And what I did there is when raven stole the moon and sun, like he went through the smoke hole, he went into the longhouse, and he stole it out of a box. So that's why at the airport I made the cedar chest. So that cedar chest goes with that pole because raven stole it out of there.
Okay.
So that's why those things two go together. Then the other story is a blind halibut fisherman. He's sitting down. I have a carved hat with a killer whale design on it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And a halibut hook. And the rope is made out of red cedar.
Okay.
And he's just sitting on a block and he's jigging. But what raven seen him fishing, and so he wanted to play a trick on him, so he dove under and was biting on the hook, making him think it was a halibut. So when the blind halibut fisherman felt something biting his hook, he jerked it and that broke his beak. And then the other pole is raven with a broken beak. He has a human face with a hat, and he has a broken beak, and he has wings. And on the belly of it, I carved a salmon on the raven's belly, but I also put a raven inside him, because when you look at it, the raven's on the halbert's belly,
Right.
and when you look at the back, the tail, let's see, I think it comes out on the front, the tail of that, and then there's the wings on the back of that raven.
Okay.
But with the broken beak one, the big wings are on the side and the tail comes out on the back. So there's actually two ravens on there.
Another wonderful carver, Jalan Edenshaw, talked to me about his 2013 legacy pole raised on Lyle Island. On August 15th, 2013, the legacy pole was raised in Guayhanas National Park, the first pole to be raised on southern Moresby Island in 130 years. The pole was carved by Jalan Edenshaw, his brother Guy, and their apprentice Tyler York as a monumental pole to honor the 20th anniversary of the Guayhanas Agreement, an agreement between the Haida Nation and the Government of Canada. Cool.
Okay, my name is Jolin from the Jaws clan, Southern Jaws clan, and I carved the pole a couple of years ago now. When I was coming up with the concept for it, I was just trying to think about the relationship between Canada and the Haida Nation. Really we were celebrating that relationship working together, although, down there it hasn't always been peaceful, but what's come out of that is something that's working pretty good right now. With the pole, I wasn't telling like a sort of a linear story, but more sort of picking different aspects of what I knew about it out. So one of the important features is that the area is protected from mountaintop to seafloor, and that's been a vision of the nation. So on the very bottom of the pole, I carved a sculpin, and the very top was an eagle representing that connectivity from ocean floor to mountaintop. The grizzly bear I chose because it, through the work that Parks has been doing, and the money that they brought, they've had archaeologists in there with all kinds of discoveries. And one of the things that they found was grizzly bear bones. Haidas have stories of grizzly bears living on this island before, way before. And so it's showing where the science is catching up with our stories, and sort of the converging of our cultures and Canada's culture.
Right.
The raven on there is put in balance of the eagle to show the two sides of the. And I couldn't just put an eagle on there and get away with it. We put Sacred One Standing and Moving story, which is a story of one of our culture heroes who he killed a sea wolf, a wasco, and able to use the wasco skin as like a coat and take his powers and hunt whales and different things. And one of the things that he did was using the wasco skin, he was able to win a competition by holding a fire on his chest for the longest to hold up Haida Gwaii.
Okay.
And so the story is when he moves, there's a hole on his chest, and when he moves, there's an earthquake. And Martin runs up and down the post, and that is the sound that's heard before an earthquake. I had something else designed there. I can't even actually remember what was designed in that place, but what happened was when we started carving the pole, we had it sort of all roughed out, and we had that big earthquake. The hot springs dried up, so that earthquake became part of the story of Guayhanas, and it's all reflected. Also, up in one of the ears, I put a dog because by the grizzly bear bones, I also found dog bones. on the one ear here, so one side has a dog and the other side has a human face representing the tourists that are now sort of part of the landscape down there, peeking out at the world. And then the watchmen, of course, so there's 3 watchmen up there, and the watchmen that are down and going is looking after the place.
Right.
And then back down in between the grizzly bear and the raven, I put the Lyle Island blockade, which was one of the big catalysts that protected the area, and had out of that conflict, this is arise and the agreements arised. Mm-hmm. So I put on these guys too, not the front one, but on the side one, I put gumboots because they're all modern history of ours.
Jim Hart is creating a monumental pole to represent the reconciliation between the Haida people and the Canadian government. Residential schools have left a lasting and devastating impact on the Haida people and their culture. In an interview with Global News, Jim is quoted as saying, "We are starting to get past it with the younger people. Once that happens, we will have to teach our youngsters about this part of our history. But we are still in it. We are still dealing with this." Jim says that this pole is about working together and looking forward to the future.
I'm working with Jim Hart. We're doing a big one for reconciliation. That one you sort of read from bottom to top, and it bottom has like a bear mother story showing sort of the old ways in those stories and whatnot, and then there's a residential school on the head. It's it's actually going to be built out bigger than the actual pole, and just sort of showing that break, and it is visually quite a break because it's all squared up. You don't usually see that.
Okay.
And then above them, there's 10 children, I think, all coming up, and they're all holding on to each other, for support.
Right.
None of their feet are showing they were grounded at that time. And above that, there's eagle, thunderbird, whale, bear, showing the sort of land and spirituality that the children were able to hold on to. And above those, we got a family unit, a chief on one side with his wife on the other side, and the children peeking out from the blankets. And then above that is a canoe on one side, and we added on, and a rowboat on the other side, showing the paths forward, but in our own way. Mm-hmm. And then copper shields on a little column, and then an eagle right on top, showing the future we're heading towards.
Sounds like Haida poles were, and still are, historical monuments displaying images representing people's origins, lineages, exploits, marriages, and memorials. These recorded histories gave people their cultural identity, proclaiming their wealth and status within the village and nation as a whole. These poles, new and old, still do this today.